Puka Nacua is the worst pick in the first round of 2024 fantasy football drafts. That's right, today we are talking the worst pick in every round of 2024 fantasy football. Now, I'm not just going to sit here and say, don't draft this guy, don't draft that guy. I'm also going to give you multiple alternatives for each round of guys you should be drafting. Let's start at the top with the worst pick in round one. Puka Nacua was incredible last season. Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw that coming. I don't care if you were the biggest Puka Nacua fan in the world. You did not see the greatest rookie wide receiver season of all time coming. I mean, Puka Nacua himself didn't see it coming. Puka Nacua's best friends didn't see it coming. Puka Nacua's mom didn't see it coming. But it happened. However, now we have to pay a premium to draft him. And while he did have that unbelievable first season, he's still a day two pick with just one season of production under his belt. And yes, I know I'm nitpicking here, but with how good the players are at the top of the draft, we have to dig a little bit deeper to make a bear case. Now remember, all of Puka Nacua's production came while Cooper Kupp was either sidelined or he wasn't playing at full health. And by all accounts, Cooper Kupp is full go heading into 2024, and he's looked as good as ever in training camp. And when these two guys were on the field together, their usage was nearly identical. According to Fantasy Points data, Puka Nacua had a first read target share of 28.5%, while Cooper Kupp's was 28.4%. Meanwhile, Puka Nacua's production took a major hit when Cooper Kupp played versus when he didn't. In games without Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua averaged 11.6 targets, 8.6 receptions, 108 receiving yards, and about half a touchdown. And when they shared the field, Puka Nacua's numbers dropped to 8.5 targets, 5.2 receptions, 78.7 receiving yards, and his touchdown average dropped by 1/10 of a point. Now, those are still excellent numbers, by the way. But the point is there is some risk in drafting Puka Nacua at his ceiling projection. Compared to the other players being drafted around his ADP, Puka Nacua presents the most risk. We don't even know if he's the wide receiver one on his own offense. How can we justify using such a premium pick on a guy like that? So instead, I'm drafting Cooper Kupp. He's available multiple rounds after Puka Nacua comes off the board. He's just 2 years removed from back-to-back seasons of scoring as the wide receiver one in fantasy points per game. He's healthy and he's looked like his old self in training camp. And then if we look at where Puka Nacua typically goes, around that pick 10, 11, 12 area, I'm going to be drafting Garrett Wilson instead. He has a similar ADP, but without the target competition. I'm old enough to remember Justin Forsett, and Zach Stacy, and CJ Anderson, and Peyton Hillis, and Thomas Rawls, and James Robinson, and Myles Gaskin, and Elijah Mitchell. I could go on, but do you know what these guys have in common? They're all day three picks or undrafted free agents who went undrafted in fantasy football, had a breakout season, and then were highly drafted the following season. And guess what? They all face planted the very next season and were never heard from again. Kyren Williams will be the next one. Don't take my word for it though. Follow the actions of the Rams this offseason. They went out and spent a premium draft pick on a running back at a time when they have plenty of needs across the roster. Instead, they used that pick on a national champion bell cow running back who is superior to Kyren Williams in every way. Blake Corum is bigger, he's stronger, he's more athletic, and he's better in pass protection. Even if he doesn't overtake Kyren Williams, he's going to eat into his workload. That means that Kyren Williams is going to lose a portion of that volume that propelled his breakout season. Remember, Kyren Williams led all running backs in snap share and touches per game in 2023. That is not going to happen again in 2024. History and common sense tell us that Kyren Williams is far too big a risk to draft with such a premium pick. So instead, I'm drafting Saquon Barkley or Jonathan Taylor. They have a similar ADP with more talent and a far more proven track record. I also like Devontae Adams and Drake London in that area. Spend your second round pick on a high-end wide receiver. Or you can wait on running back altogether. There are plenty of running backs with similar upside and safer floors multiple rounds later than where Kyren Williams is being drafted. Think Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Etienne, Rachaad White. If you really want a Rams running back, just take Blake Corum 10 rounds later. In 3 years, we have one productive season from Nico Collins. He's your old school third-year breakout. It took a major quarterback upgrade for him to see any sort of fantasy relevance. And that's what concerns me about his price. Was his 2023 breakout just a full result of him being good? Or was it fueled by the right arm of CJ Stroud, who uplifted all of the players in that offense? I say that because in the 2 games that Nico Collins missed, Noah Brown stepped into that role and put up the exact same production. Nico Collins missed week 10 and week 15. In those games, Noah Brown combined for 46 fantasy points. He got 7 of 8 targets for 172 yards and scored as the wide receiver 6 against the Bengals. And then he was the wide receiver 9 against the Titans with 8 receptions on 11 targets for 82 yards and a touchdown. So is it the player or is it the role? Because last I checked, Noah Brown is a journeyman wide receiver with replacement level talent. I'm not trying to disrespect Nico Collins. You have to have some level of baseline talent to put up that level of production. He's a good wide receiver. My worry, though, is that he's not good enough to rise above the target competition in that offense and return value at his 3rd round ADP. You look at Tank Dell, he was phenomenal as a rookie. He's back healthy. He could be even better in his 2nd season. The team also went out and traded for Stephon Diggs. Diggs has commanded 155 or more targets in 4 straight seasons. He's an alpha wide receiver. He's going to get a ton of looks. And honestly, it's going to be hard for any of those Texans wide receivers to return value at their current ADP. They're all going to siphon targets away from each other. And in addition to that, the team traded for Joe Mixon in an effort to bolster the run game. And more runs, of course, means fewer passes. Again, I don't think Nico Collins is a bust, but it's nearly impossible to justify taking him at his current cost. So instead, I'm drafting Michael Pittman or DJ Moore or Jalen Waddle, even Malik Neighbors, Cooper Kupp, or Mike Evans. And if I want a Texans wide receiver, it's going to be Tank Dell. In the games that Tank Dell and Nico Collins played together, their numbers were nearly identical. Collins had 52 targets, 601 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns, while Dell had 53 targets, 562 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. And yet Tank Dell is available 25 picks later. CJ Stroud is one of the great young quarterbacks in the NFL. He had one of the best rookie seasons of all time. However, his ADP is in the range of Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Those guys present a higher floor and a higher ceiling with less than a round of ADP between them and CJ Stroud. And Stroud is going 16 spots ahead of Anthony Richardson and 40 spots ahead of Kyler Murray. Both of those guys have QB1 overall upside and a high floor. That's because while CJ Stroud is fantastic, he's a pocket passer. He's more in the mold of a Joe Burrow, which is great, but that's not the type of quarterback that's going to typically be a good bet to deliver a top 5 season in fantasy football. Now, I don't think drafting CJ Stroud in the 4th round is going to tank your season, but it's just an inefficient use of a premium draft pick considering the opportunity costs and the guys who are available later. So if you want to pay up a quarterback, take a Josh Allen, take a Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson at an elevated cost. These are dual threat quarterbacks who have had multiple seasons of elite fantasy production. Or you can take a cheaper yet higher upside quarterback like an Anthony Richardson or Kyler Murray or even Jaden Daniels. And if you want the style of CJ Stroud, you want that pocket passer, go draft Dak Prescott or Jordan Love or Brock Purdy. And in the 4th round, you can lock in a starter at a different position. Malik Neighbors, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Smith, Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, Michael Pittman, they're all available in that round. We all agree that the best part of fantasy football is the draft, right? I used to have to stop myself from drafting too many teams because how am I going to manage that many rosters during the season? I don't have time for all that. That's where Underdog Fantasy comes in. On Underdog, all you do is draft. No lineup setting, no waiver wire, just draft, and you're done. And you can win real money. I'm drafting teams everywhere I go. I'm drafting in line at the grocery store. I'm drafting while I'm cooking dinner. And don't tell my boss, but I'm drafting teams on Underdog all day while I'm at work. There's no limit. So get on Underdog Fantasy, use promo code YARDSPER to get your pick'em special and your $250 deposit bonus, and start drafting morning, day, and night. Keenan Allen is 32 years old. He's on a new team. He's in a new offense, and he's playing with a rookie quarterback. Not only that, but for the first time in his career, he's not the number 1 wide receiver on his team. Allen will trail DJ Moore in the pecking order. He's also going to have to fight off sensational rookie wide receiver Rome Odunze, who the team just used a top 10 pick to draft. Now, Allen can still be productive in fantasy football. There's no question he can still play. However, the cost to get him doesn't align with realistic projections. All 3 Bears wide receivers are being drafted within the top 6 rounds. It's hard to see all 3 of them being able to return value with a rookie under center, even if that rookie is Caleb Williams. And then if we look at the other wide receivers in the 5th and 6th rounds, we see multiple guys who are the wide receiver 1s on their team, like Zay Flowers, Amari Cooper, George Pickens, Christian Kirk, and Terry McLaurin. And then we got Keenan Allen, who might not even be the wide receiver 2 on the Bears. So I'd rather have those wide receivers, the Zay Flowers, the George Pickens, the Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk, and Terry McLaurin. Or you can take a tight end. There are 3 with a round 5 ADP. Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, George Kittle. And if I want a Bears wide receiver, I would rather pay up for DJ Moore or take the discount on Rome Odunze. The Bears prioritized DeAndre Swift this offseason, making him the first signing of free agency. However, Swift has bounced around the league now on his 3rd team in 3 years. He had some moments in Philadelphia last season, but overall he was inefficient and unreliable for fantasy football. That was despite playing behind one of the league's best offensive lines. Admittedly, he was kind of miscast in Philadelphia. They were using him as more of a 2-down grinder rather than the receiving weapon that his skill set suggests he should be. But I think that'll come back in 2024 with the Bears. The team has made it clear they want to utilize his receiving ability and work him into a more significant role in passing situations. And that's exciting. However, we've yet to see exactly what the full scope of his role is going to be. I'm not betting on him suddenly becoming a 3-down bell cow. And I'm not exactly comfortable using a 6th-round pick on a glorified satellite back. There is real competition in that backfield for the early down work. Both Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson are a significant threat to take a significant chunk of the 1st and 2nd down action, as well as carries down by the goal line. And that could box DeAndre Swift into a role that is fun and certainly valuable for fantasy football, but impossible to return value at his 6th-round price tag. So instead in the 6th round, I'm going to target Christian Kirk and Terry McLaurin. These are 2 real-life wide receiver ones who are still on the board in round 6. Or if I want a running back, it's going to be David Montgomery or Ramondre Stevenson. These are running backs with established roles, higher floors, and higher ceilings available in the same round. And if I'm going to draft a Bears running back, I'd rather take a shot late in the draft on a Roschon Johnson or Khalil Herbert. Both have all-purpose skill sets and they're essentially free. Jordan Addison had a nice rookie season with 70 receptions, 911 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. However, if we go beyond the box score, we can see that Jordan Addison has one of the more precarious profiles of any of the wide receivers going inside the top 100 picks. For one, he had a wildly unsustainable 14.1% touchdown rate in 2023. He got 10 touchdowns on 70 receptions, nearly doubling his 5.8 expected touchdown total. And on top of that, he benefited with nearly half a season without Justin Jefferson, as well as multiple weeks without TJ Hawkinson. Now, Jefferson's back, Hawkinson's going to return sometime in September or October, and Kirk Cousins has been replaced by Sam Darnold. And that's before we even get to the risk of a suspension due to his off-season arrest. So Jordan Addison's ADP just does not make sense given the other players that you could draft instead. Terry McLaurin's going just 5 slots ahead of him. Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown, Chris Godwin, they're all better bets at a similar cost. I'm also considering Kyler Murray in this round, lock in a quarterback with QB1 overall upside, or even Ladd McConkey and Deontay Johnson. They're available more than 15 spots later. I got 2 for you in the 8th round. It's the ACL bros, Nick Chubb and Jonathan Brooks. I don't understand how these guys are going in the single-digit rounds. Nick Chubb's coming off a catastrophic knee injury that's going to keep him off the field until probably mid-season. And on top of that injury, he's had multiple severe injuries to his knees, going back to his college days, and now he's 28 years old. And even when he returns to the field, he's not going to be his old explosive self right away, if ever again. And he's certainly not going to be in a bell cow workload. Maybe he can be fantasy relevant again late in the season, but that still feels like a long shot and does not justify his 8th round ADP. He should be going outside the top 120 picks. And similarly, Jonathan Brooks, the Panthers rookie running back, he's coming off a November ACL injury. And while he's many years younger than Nick Chubb, and certainly doesn't have the same injury history, but Jonathan Brooks has a lack of experience that's going to work as a hurdle for him to get over on his way to a fantasy relevant role. I mean, he didn't even gain a ton of experience in college, given that he was backing up Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson for most of his career. And additionally, he's never even stepped on an NFL field. Never mind in a game. He's never practiced. He's never worked out. He's never even gone through a walkthrough. So even once he's fully healthy, it's going to take some time before the coaches are comfortable enough to hand him the keys to the backfield in a workhorse role. That may never come in 2024. The team has already said that Jonathan Brooks is unlikely to play until at least week 3, week 4. And in my experience, it's likely that turns to week 6 or week 7 before we're all said and done. So like Nick Chubb, drafting Jonathan Brooks in the 8th round is a catastrophic mistake that is very unlikely to pay off. Instead, I'm drafting Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren outscored Najee Harris in 2023. He's going to benefit from a running back-centric offense with improved quarterback play. I also like Deontay Johnson here. He's a perfect fit with quarterback Bryce Young. He should dominate the targets in Carolina. How cool would it be to have a full-length podcast about your fantasy football league? That would be pretty sweet, right? Well, we offer exactly that at yardsperfantasy.com. All you need to do is sign up and tell us a little bit about your league. And our team of real fantasy football analysts will break down each team with player evaluations, trade advice, draft strategy. We'll give you a team outlook, and we promise not to hold back on the roasting either. Signups are happening right now, and there are limited spots available. So head over to yardsperfantasy.com and let's get started. Dalton Schultz benefited from volume in a thin receiving core in Dallas. And in his first season in Houston, he once again benefited from a thin receiver room and a healthy target share. While it's great that he's paired with one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL and in an offense that's going to be among the tops in the league, Dalton Schultz may be in the shadows more than he's been in a while. That's because the Texans are getting a healthy Tank Dell back on top of adding Stephon Diggs via trade. That means at best, Dalton Schultz is going to be fourth in the pecking order behind Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. The team also traded for Joe Mixon this offseason in an effort to bolster the run game. None of this is going to help Dalton Schultz return to the low-end tight end 1 tier that he resided in last year. He's likely to score closer to the tight end 15 range, and he certainly doesn't have the upside to outdo his 9th round ADP. So instead, I'm targeting David Njoku. David Njoku is going 12 spots ahead of Dalton Schultz, and he has much less target competition. He's in an offense that is projected to increase the passing volume, and he's coming off a tight end 6 season. I'm also considering Luke Musgrave or Pat Freiermuth. Both of those guys project similar to Dalton Schultz, but they have higher ceilings and are more than 15 spots cheaper. Other guys in the 9th round I'm looking at are Jalen Warren, Trey Benson, Christian Watson, or even Caleb Williams. Jameson Williams made this video last year, and after averaging just 2 catches and 29 yards per game, his ADP has dropped just 1 round compared to where he was going at this time in 2023. Now, I know the reports out of Lions training camp are painting Jameson Williams as an improved player, but that bar has been set pretty low after his first 2 seasons. It's hard to imagine Jameson Williams taking a leap so big that he becomes a weekly starter in fantasy football. I mean, it's one thing for like a day 3 pick from a small school taking a couple years to get going. That makes sense. But when a top 12 pick from Alabama is bad for 2 straight seasons to begin his career, he's probably just bad. And both of these things can be true. Jameson Williams looks like a much improved player at training camp, and Jameson Williams is never going to be a reliable fantasy asset. So instead, use your 10th round pick on Jaden Daniels or Brian Robinson or Tajay Spears. Or if you're looking for a wide receiver, Cortland Sutton, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Lockett, they're all available within 10 picks of Jameson Williams.